Okay. Thank you, Courtney. We can go ahead and maybe jump to presentation mode on your presentation, and we'll get started.
Sorry, one moment.
Not a problem. We'll go ahead and get started anyways while you're getting the presentation up. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Cash Statewide Facilities, our monthly general membership meeting. So welcome. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Alan Rising. I am the current Cash Chair. I'm also the Business Services Administrator for Long Beach Unified School District. So good morning. This will be a great opportunity today with our monthly meeting to talk with our representatives from the different state organizations to talk a little bit about what's happening in their respective areas, and also some kind of oversight or look at what's going on legislatively in our state. We have folks from our cash staff that will be coming in to talk a little bit about that. So as a quick reminder, if you're an attendee, that you are muted, but that does not mean that we don't want to hear from you. We do ask that you use the chat feature and make sure that you list all attendees so that everyone, including the panelists, can see your question. As we go through the presentation, I'll be monitoring those and be asking those questions of our presenters throughout the presentation. So please take advantage of that. We do want to hear your questions, and we do want to respond to those questions. We also like to take this opportunity to acknowledge those first-time attendees, those newcomers to our industry, and also to the Cash family. So if you're a newcomer, first-time attendee, feel free to put your name and what district you're in the chat. We'd like to hear from you and welcome you to this meeting. This is a great opportunity for us to connect. So just as a reminder as well, this month we will be digital. Next month we will be back in person, and there'll be some altering of that as we go through the various different months. We are moving back towards in-person meetings in Sacramento to really create that connection and that working relationship with all of us. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and move forward. Just as a quick reminder to everyone, we do have a few different network mixers on tap, no pun intended. Thursday, April the 25th, up in Fresno. This is right in alignment with tomorrow's technical training, small schools technical training that'll be held up in Fresno. We have May 1st, we have a mixer that is occurring in Palm Springs. And then on May the 16th, we have another mixer scheduled for Ballast Point down here in Long Beach. So please, we'd love to see all of you out at these mixers. This is a great opportunity for all of us to get together as an industry and connect with those folks that we work with, those firms and those support services that we rely on to do our work. So take advantage of these mixers as an opportunity to engage. So moving on, also a quick little plug for our spring conference, which is coming up May 16th. So this really will be talking about various different topics. This will be an all-day event. We'll be hosting it right down here in Southern California in Long Beach. We'll be talking about current legislation and what's happening at the state level with some of the current bills and things that are going on. We're going to talk a little bit about some polling and what's happening with our state bond initiative. We've brought some folks in from the home construction world that's going to be talking to us about that nexus and connection between the need for a state school bond and how that links with the construction of new homes and how those two are connected with each other. By May 16th, we will all have received the latest May revise from the governor's office. And so that'll be a very interesting topic as we dig into the economic outlook of our state. We're also going to be talking a little bit about construction costs, other challenges that we're facing in our industry, health and safety issues, and just a host of different policy related topics that'll be discussed throughout that day. So great opportunity to get involved. Please register, go on the CASH website and look for information for our spring mini conference, which will be an all-day event on May the 16th. So looking forward to seeing you all there. So with that, it's time for us to jump into our state agencies. And so today we have John Gordon with us from California Department of Education. And welcome, John. Appreciate you being here. And I'll let you take it away and give us an update of what's happening in CDE.
Thanks, Alan. Appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. Glad to be back. I've been pretty busy here lately. I want to share a couple updates. As most folks may know or realize that, CDE received a federal grant here at the beginning of the year to support our small school districts. It's a federal grant supporting America's school infrastructure grant. And so we are in the process this first year of really planning out how we want to move forward. There are 3 different components of the grant. Creating some resources that would actually help all of our school districts. We're looking on building some stuff here related to assets management here in the upcoming years. Also working on building really a larger network here to support our smalls as it relates to facilities. And we're also doing a direct technical assistance program for a select few where we're going to be contracting out and assessing facilities, helping them through direct technical assistance on identifying projects, helping them with identifying funding, helping them with contracting. So as part of that, we are hiring, and we have just hired a staff services manager who will be on the forefront leading this endeavor with myself and others at CDE. Her name is Mimadine Zanzi. She has an extensive amount of experience in school facilities as a contractor. And I think at one time she worked at OPSE before it was called OPSE. She also has an extensive experience working with small school districts. I am completely delighted to have her on board. I think this is really going to advance our work in a very meaningful way that's going to, I think, move the needle in terms of supporting our smalls, as well as just creating a wider array of resources for really all school districts to use. So excited to do that. She starts on May 1st, and there's much more to come on that. So the other exciting news I have to share is we just released a field rep exam. So if you're interested in working for the Department of Education in my office as a field rep, or to work for a state, you got to get on the exam list. And my colleague Brian Boyd and I have worked with our HR unit here in the last probably 4 or 5 months to create a field rep exam so people can get on a list, because I do have a vacancy that I'm trying to fill before the end of this fiscal year, which I think it's going to be announced here once it moves through its channels, announce and have that position open and hopefully have it filled here in the next few months. But the first step is to take the field rep exam. So I have some stuff on the What's New page. I think after my presentation, I'll put a couple of links in the chat. One is on the SASE grant I just mentioned earlier, in case you're not familiar with it, and then off as well as our What's New page, which should have our field rep exam out there. And once I figure out when we'll be announcing the positions so we can receive applications, I'll let folks know on that. I had this vacancy now for wow, over 1.5 years. So I'm really looking forward to getting another field rep on board. Last thing I want to talk about really quickly, as we're seeing a lot of pre-K, TK, full day kindergarten designs. I've come across a small handful of designs that are a little bit of a cause of concern I wanted to kind of bring up. we're seeing in some cases for a TK, classroom design, the restroom area. In some cases, we've seen a design set up to where you had two, maybe TKs, and maybe they're sharing the restroom and there's a Jack and Jill kind of design setup, which could be problematic in terms of, ensuring student privacy. Sometimes a little person is not able to lock the door on the other side, especially if it's a single user. And really, you should be having one toilet per classroom. Another design that we're seeing, and when I've talked to the architects, they're really doing the right things. They're engaging with the end user. In this case, it's the TK teachers. And what they're wanting to see is two toilets in a single room, without any partitions or without them being completely enclosed. And so that can be a little problematic. A couple of things really to consider is that these particular teaching stations at any given year could be a preschool classroom, a TK, as well as a kindergarten classroom. So you have to be thinking long-term as your enrollment fluctuates. And really, you should be ensuring that the toilet stalls have privacy, hopefully enclosed partitions, so that the students can do what they need to do with some level of privacy. Because I understand with preschoolers and the TKs in particular, teachers are wanting some level of line of sight, because in some cases there could be a body training still issue that's still out there, but students should have that student privacy, hopefully enclosed partitions, so that they're doing it without observing other students using the restroom. So just kind of want to put that out there. I think when we have talked to the architects in the school districts about that, and maybe some of the implications and challenges that may come up with that outside of just on the outside. I think they see the larger picture, and it's probably best case for them to do these enclosed partitions. So obviously, in both cases, they've had to increase the size of the restroom to meet DSA requirements. But I did want to kind of bring that up to folks and make sure that you're engaging not only your TK teachers, but making sure your facilities director, your superintendent, your board understands what you're projecting in terms of your design considerations for the restrooms, because obviously they have to be okay with what how that looks. So with that, that's all that I have to offer you up today for the CD update. I don't know if there's any questions, or Alan, if there's
Yeah.
some thoughts.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate that. And you're right. And I know, with the work that we've been doing in Long Beach, we've been one of the ones that's been engaging with CDE a lot on this issue. And you're right. It's a interesting situation, and there's opinions on both sides of that about how much can you or can you not see into a private space. And so what I would only suggest for folks that are considering that is really engage in a meaningful way to really understand the advantages and disadvantages of creating sight lines into those spaces, right? And there's issues on both sides of that court. I just want to throw this out there just because I see Joanne made a comment here about cafeteria doors or cafe doors, and I'm assuming those are more like and she says split in the middle, and I'm assuming it's a top bottom kind of a split as opposed to a side to side split. But it may be a unique way to address some of the concerns that are out there that might that districts might consider as they move forward with implementing these things. So thank you for that, John. I appreciate it.
Got it.
Okay, so seeing no other questions, we'll move on. And so quickly update with the Division of State Architect. We have Ida Claire, our state architect, here with us today. Welcome, Ida. Appreciate you being here, and we'll turn it over so you can give us an update of all the great things that are going on in DSA.
Great, thank you. Hold on, let me switch my screens. Give me a second. Okay. DSA has been busy. For the current fiscal year, which began last July 1st, we've received $8.7 billion in construction, 3,046 projects. And you can see the breakdown from each regional office. The busiest has been San Diego, then Sacramento, Los Angeles, and Oakland. Of course, the project size varies, so being busy is relative dependent on the projects, the number of projects and also the project size received. Submittals in April have been robust, close to $1 billion. We're at 921 million, and we're about 1 week shy of completing our April submittals that are coming in or planned or have come in or are planned to come in. Intended submittals for May are actually a little low, which we believe is indicative of getting just past the summer rush. We're at 605 million for May, with the busiest office in the number of projects being Los Angeles and also the greatest dollar volume. We have new training on DSA Academy for design professionals in school districts. This is a sampling. Some do offer free on-demand CEU credit, so we do encourage that you check out our DSA Academy for your training needs. As of January 1st of this year, SB 515 Stern applied. I know that Cash just did a presentation on this. SB 515 and answered some questions. We would like to encourage all school districts, if you have any questions on the application of the requirements, specifically those that limit the path of travel improvements to 20% of the adjusted construction cost, and identifying which improvements may fall under path of travel and which improvements may actually fall under newly constructed elements required to provide accessibility to the project. If you meet with us in a pre-application meeting, we'll be able to clarify those requirements for you. Excuse me, my voice. An alert about AB 1572, which was also passed, which eliminates potable water for irrigation of non-functional turf. Again, if you have non-potable water sources to irrigate your turf, this doesn't apply. But if you are using potable water to irrigate turf, as of January 1st, 2028, you will no longer be able to do so, which may mean removing the non-functional turf or identifying some method to irrigate those areas with non-potable water. And the legislation defines non-functional turf as basically turf located within streets, right-of-way, and parking lots. Fields and sports fields and playgrounds are not included. Those are actually considered functional turf. And so DSA is required to support the elimination of irrigation of non-functional turf with potable water. And we're still exploring requirements for Cal Green that will be tied to an effective date of January 1st, 2028, so that we can enforce this requirement once it becomes in effect. But I did want to caution that if your projects are being submitted right now and they include non-functional turf using potable water for irrigation, that you might want to reconsider that, because it would need to be removed from service in 3.5 years or so. We do have documentation on our website for workforce housing, even though policy 2401, which is directed to community college student housing projects, you can use the information in there is applicable to workforce housing in where DSA's jurisdiction crosses with the local jurisdiction. So it's important to understand that while housing projects presently are excluded from DSA review or exempted from DSA review, and the default then goes to the local jurisdiction. For community college student housing, you are still welcome to submit to DSA. For workforce housing, we don't have the authority to review that. But we do have the authority of areas where that workforce housing may exist on a specific campus. And so I do encourage you to check out policy 2401. I also encourage you to check out IR 11B11 when it discusses bathrooms and newly constructed housing facilities for undergraduate students at a public school, college, university. I know that many of you also don't have housing for students that are elementary or secondary at your facilities, but the application and the restroom design is also still applicable. So these are very good documents to consult if you're doing your housing projects. DSA does have a new Form 403C, which replaces the GL4. I've mentioned this a couple times, but it is intended to create greater compliance to Cal Green by illustrating where the requirements are addressed in the documents, and also provides us information on being able to understand the challenges and implementation of Cal Green, since we don't provide a complete review for Cal Green. But we are here to provide additional support so that you can ensure that you meet the mandatory measures that have been adopted. Status on IR EB4, we have launched our new cost estimating templates, and that is in Uniformat. It's in what's called a Uniformat format, and we have had a request to also provide for one in a master format layout, and so we are working on that with our consultant to create an additional template for those cost estimators who prefer to use the master format instead of the Uniformat for their estimates. So that should be coming hopefully within a couple months. This is the cost estimating template that we have presently on our website, which is in Uniformat. And it does have a level 2 summary, which is what you're seeing right now. A level 3 and level 4 summary can be utilized in this document, which would feed information into the level 2 summary. However, we don't require the level 3 or level 4 documentation to be filled out. What is required to be submitted is the level 2. So if your cost estimating presently is either in master format or it is in a different method that your cost estimator so chooses, they would have to transfer this information only onto the level 2 summary information. Our suite of IRs for existing buildings all of them have been issued except IR EB2, which is coming soon. We are in the final review of that document and hope to have it posted in May. And with IR EB2, then our suite of IRs for existing buildings will be complete. A little bit about what's coming July 1st, as you know, all gender multi-user restroom facilities, and also additional accessibility requirements for if you opt into all gender multi-user restroom facilities, especially if your urinals are in a compartment. Those are the urinal accessibility compartment standards you'll find in CBC Chapter 11B. There are other requirements coming into 11B, but none are of any significant magnitude. What really was new is the requirements for multi-user all-gender toilet rooms. Excuse me. Cal Green CO2 monitoring is now required for existing facilities beginning July 1st. That means if you're doing a facility modernization with classrooms in that building, CO2 monitors will be required to be installed. This also implements new legislation that requires CO2 monitors for K-12 and community college classrooms. EV charging, we do have a charging power alternative coming into play, which I believe is even being used right now, and also requirements for existing facilities. we know that some of these regulations are a bit challenging, and so we do want you to work with DSA on pre-application meetings so that we can also be educated in our regulatory development to know where we need to make adjustments as we proceed with further regulatory developments. Also, carbon reduction regulation mandatory measures will also be effective July 1st. This is statewide for non-residential and K-12 schools and community colleges, buildings that are 50,000 square foot aggregate, meaning a single building of 50,000 square feet, or an existing building with an addition of 50,000 square feet, or a project that has a group of buildings that are modernized or, excuse me, newly constructed with 50,000 square foot aggregate, would need to meet one of three pathways for carbon reduction, for reducing the embodied carbon of materials. Of course, building reuse is the most efficient way to eliminate carbon or eliminate the contribution of carbon to the atmosphere. And so we do want to encourage the building reuse component. The other two pathways, or for new facilities, the two pathways available is whole building life cycle analysis, which is software driven, and that software is free and available to perform those calculations. And the prescriptive path, which is met by producing environmental product declarations on the drawings that meet the global warming pretension limits. All for the prescriptive path, the 5 materials that are affected by EPDs are structural steel, steel reinforcement, mineral wool insulation, flat glass, and concrete. Again, any questions directed to that, please contact DSA. You can also request pre-application meetings, and we will ensure we'll provide the necessary support in understanding the requirements for your project. We are presently in building standards rulemaking right now in the what we call the cycle cigar bar is we are in the process here of submitting our initial submittals to the Code Advisory Committee. That will occur in the next couple months. You can find information on the Code Advisory Committee meetings on the Building Standards Commission website, bsc.ca.gov. And these are the dates for that. Green has already been held. Plumbing, electrical, mechanical, and energy has already been held. Our June in access compliance will be heard in June. I did want to say that our green building standards are quite minimal. This cycle. I believe that we're only advancing requirements that are in legislation for community college CO2 monitors. And I think there might have been one other change that was just a clarifying requirement, not a new requirement or a new mandatory measure. Excuse me. Access, we do have some, we have about 3 significant substantive proposals. Most have to deal, actually, I believe, with housing. And then, of course, you can see here, building, fire, and other will be July 9th through 11th. Structural design, lateral forces, July 16 to 17, and health facilities, July 30th. So if you are subscribed to our listserv, you will be receiving information regarding the Code Advisory Committee meetings, a link to our proposals, and how you can participate at the Code Advisory Committee meetings and comment. Building Standards Commission requires that our documents be on their website so that as not to create confusion. So what you will find on our website is a link to the Building Standards website so you can access those proposals. And if you are not yet subscribed to our rulemaking activities, please do so that you can participate in the rulemaking process and provide comment at the opportunities that exist. The first one here is initiates a final opportunity to make substantive changes prior to the formal process, which will begin after the Code Advisory Committee meetings. And then, of course, now's an opportunity for questions, but I did want to let you know that if you're subscribing to our listserv because you are not yet subscribed, you will go to the Division of the State Architect website. At the very bottom of the screen, you'll click on this link that says subscribe, and that will allow you to subscribe to DSA's mailing list, the ones that are most relevant to you or of interest to you. And with that, Ellen, I'm done.
Great. Thank you, Ida. That's a great update. You know, I didn't see any questions pop into the chat, so wonderful job. But again, I'll just underscore, get involved, you know, help the entire industry out, help DSA with what they're doing. Get involved with some of these advisory committee meetings and let your voice be heard, right? This is an opportunity
Absolutely.
for all of us to get involved. So there was one just jump in, so I guess my call for questions worked. So question, why is DSA proposing new language for administrative code 4-333 regarding inspectors being individually employed? How does DSA plan to address the shortage of inspectors?
So, good question. I did want to let you know that I do believe that that statement is being misinterpreted somewhat. So first of all, the reason why we're doing this is we had within the last rulemaking cycles, an issue with the lab, with a specific laboratory, and an issue with a project inspector, where it was demonstrated that our regulations did not go far enough in specifying grounds for disciplinary action and the due process and appeals process in order to take action against a project inspector or a lab. And so we had been working with our legal department and the Deputy Attorney General in making our regulations more robust so that we can hold project inspectors and laboratories to greater accountability. And part of that required reconciliation with the requirements that were in statute in the Ed Code. And so that specific language that you see is in addition was not either was not extremely clear in our present regulations or non-existent. And it was under the advisement of our attorneys that we include that language. We have received clarity that employment doesn't mean you need to be an employee of the school district. Employment in the legal sense can either be employer retained, so either employed or retained under a contractual agreement. And so that is what that statement says. Because we see that it's not very clear, we are able to, from statute in regulation, be a little bit more specific. And so we will probably be looking to amend that language because we've received so many questions in a preliminary review. But that's essentially the reason why we're advancing the requirements. We have actually removed the project inspector eligibility and certification process from the body of the administrative code in Article, I think, 5 and 6, and remade it its own separate article. Article 10 is the certification process for project inspectors and special inspectors. Article 11 is the acceptance process for laboratories. And we feel that, again, also under the guidance of our attorneys, that by placing the certification program separate from the responsibilities of those individuals in the field, that the requirements to apply and maintain certification and also has set the expectation of how we expect the conduct of our project inspectors to be is made much clearer. We're also hoping we've pared down a little bit of the eligibility requirements to make them a little easier to understand and hopefully easier to consider applying. We felt like before it was a bit cumbersome and unclear, and we didn't know if that was part of the issue that was discouraging new applicants into the program. So clarity we believe will help increase participation in the program. And this is just the first step. Well, actually not the first step, it's probably the second step of a multifaceted effort by DSA to streamline and improve the project inspector program. Our first was the recertification process, which is now all online and on a continuing education format instead of in-person examination format. Our second is now our examinations have transitioned to computer-based testing in our offices. So they're more regionally located, and we're also increasing our testing dates. Now we've improved the regulations, which is what we're in the process of doing right now. And then after we get all that done, we have hired someone new that is going to interface more with the project inspectors and community college districts, hopefully Cash as a partner, in trying to collaboratively determine how we can increase the project inspector pool. I will say that DSA does not see that this is our responsibility alone. In fact, we don't see that. We have a responsibility to increase that interest. We have a responsibility to certify them. But we do know that we play a role and we want to be a partner in that. And so we think it's going to, we're improving on the foundation of the program and then looking to advance various methods to increase the project inspector pool through partner collaboratives. Hopefully an apprenticeship program will work, which will then perhaps any time spent in an apprenticeship may actually contribute to time spent so that they can apply, right? And also we're do have new resources of where there are grants that those internships can actually be paid internships so that we can increase equity in the project inspector pool, so that while people are securing internships, they're actually earning an income that isn't placed on the school. And so again, it's multifaceted and we're working on it.
Great. Thank you for all that work. It's really a tough thing to balance quality of inspectors versus quantity of inspectors.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've heard concerns around the industry about both of those concerns, right? They're just not available, and the ones that are available, we want to make sure that they're the most qualified to do that work. And so it's wonderful work. So one last question was,
Mm-hmm.
So if you're interested, whether it's a firm or an individual wants to get involved in helping, how can they get involved? How can they be assist with some of these efforts?
Oh, that's great. Well, we will be in forums such as these, making a call when we're ready. As I stated, we've hired someone new. That person does need to get some people in place and transition our certification programs under that leadership, and then work out. So it is still a little bit away, I guess I should say, with it perhaps maybe 3 to 4 months. However, send me an email and I will hold on to it and I will pass it on to that individual so that when we are looking for that collaborative discussion, we can ensure that they're included in the process. And also to stay tuned in forums such as these when we will be hopefully making a call to action.
Great. Thank you. I really appreciate all the hard work you and your team to really support what we're trying to do out here in school. So thank you very much. So with that, we'll move on to OPSC. So we have Brian LePasque with us today to talk a little bit about what's happening in OPSC and all the great work and partnership that's happening there. Oh, can't hear you there, Brian. I don't know if you're on mute or. Oh, still nothing.
That should do it. How's that?
There you go. Now you're live.
Sorry about that.
No
I
problem.
switched my dock today. I forgot to update that. Yeah, so good morning. Thank you. Just a few updates today. We've been busy collecting information on construction cost indexes and all the different indexes we have to choose from. So we've been working hard on that. We're comparing and contrasting all the different aspects of each of them. A lot of information to gather and organize, but we've got a lot of really good info. So we're putting that together, and we should have some information on that very shortly. So we're looking forward to sharing that with all of you. we just awarded a new contract for OPSC online work, and that's development work. So right now, I think we have probably, I'd estimate maybe 90% of our, or maybe even more than that, of our functionality integrated into OPSC online. We're calling this new contract the enhancements contract, and because that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be enhancing, taking a look at ways we can improve the interface and the usability of it. This year, we're planning on reaching out to all of you and doing some live demoing of functionality and trying to gather some feedback, because like I said, this year we're going to be really focused on enhancing it and making little changes to it in order to improve upon it. So we're going to want to get feedback from all of you. We're also working on expanding and improving our user guide. There is a user guide in the resources section, but we're updating that with a lot more screenshots and a lot of the things that have taken place since we initially put that guide out. So we're working on that too. So be on the lookout for that. I don't know the timeline on that, but we're working on it. So and we're continuing to improve it all the time. Every about 5 or 6 weeks or so, we have a new release with new features, and so we're working through all those. And then speaking of public meetings, we have a few of those coming up for other topics as well. We're in the midst of finalizing dates, but we should be having those. We should come up with some very soon. The topics that we're looking to put out there, the first one's second round modernization. The statute regarding that is pretty clear, and we have regulations as well, especially with respect to portable buildings. But we do plan on going out and discussing that externally. We've received a few applications in recent months that have identified some areas I think that we could all probably use some education on. There's some nuances there that should probably be brought to light, and so we're planning on talking about that one. And again, the dates, I don't have a date yet, but it shouldn't be too far into the future. Another topic we're going to be bringing forward is the inclusion of transitional kindergarten as a grade level on the 5001 for projecting enrollment. We're looking to discuss those proposed changes now, but we probably are going to, and this is up for, for discussion, but we're probably going to be looking to have those incorporated when the age expansion is fully in effect, which would be for the 25-26 enrollment year. So we're talking about basically about 1.5 years from now is when it's fully implemented and the full age expansion that they rolled out is done. And so that's when we're looking to implement those changes, but we wanted to get out ahead of it a little bit and talk about what, how we're going to incorporate that. So we'll be having a series of meetings on that topic. And then lastly, kind of a little more, I'd say less urgent. There's going to be some changes we're bringing forward for facility hardship and seismic mitigation regulations. And I'm sure all of you know, we've updated those fairly recently. It was just a few years ago. And there's just some areas of cleanup that we're looking for. At this point, we don't have any sort of, I guess, program or procedural changes that we're putting forth. It's just some clarifying language to make them a little bit easier to use and to clarify a few things that we think could benefit everyone, just to be a little bit more clear on some of the things in those regulations. And then again, those are the 3 topics I wanted to bring up. So second round modernization, TK and the 5001, and facility hardship and seismic regulation cleanup or clarifying regs. And I don't have timing on it, but it'll be in the near future here, coming up pretty soon. And then lastly, the governor's early action plan was released earlier this month, and it reflects legislature's agreement to reduce SFP funding from the 24-25 budget from $875 million to $375 million. That's not guaranteed yet, but that's kind of the starting point and where the budget was the last time we saw it. So we're monitoring that. And then additionally, it defers $550 million for full day kindergarten, transitional kindergarten, and preschool facilities funding to the 24-25 budget. So those are the changes that we're monitoring in the budgetary language right now. That's all I had today. I'm available for some questions if you have any, but thanks for having us, and hope everybody's doing good out there.
Great. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate all the support. And yes, that's a good point at the very end. We're all anxiously looking at the May revise to see that those commitments from the governor's office to continue to provide general fund apportionments to the school facilities program is something that we're all anxiously waiting to ensure that the money that's already been committed doesn't either get further reduced or eliminated, right, as we move forward. So definitely one of the points that we're looking at. So I don't see any questions popping up in the chat. So with that, thank you. Thank you for the support and all the great work you're doing in OPSC. We appreciate it.
Thanks,
So
Al.
with that, we'll move on. The next slide. So now we're going to call up Nancy Charas Espinosa and Rebecca Colleen from the cash staff to talk to us a little bit about some of the regulatory updates and the legislation that's occurring up in Sacramento. So with that, it looks like I'm going to turn it over to Nancy and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Alan. Hi, everybody. Apologies for the setup here. I'm coming to you live from the state capitol, and there's a big AC unit behind me and some hearings down the hall. So I hope you can hear me. But I wanted to give you an update first on where we are in the legislative calendar. So this Friday is the deadline for policy committees to hear and report out fiscal bills, which is most of the bills are deemed to have a fiscal impact. So it is a very, very busy time in the Capitol, which is why I didn't even have time to get back to the office. As Alan mentioned, in addition to what's happening legislatively, there is a parallel track for the budget development. The budget subcommittees are very busy talking about the issues that affect us and everybody else. We are anticipating that May revision coming in mid-May. And I do want to do a little bit of managing of expectations because unfortunately, it's not looking very good so far for the general fund resources for the school facilities program and the TK facilities program. So I just want to put that out there, but of course we will continue to advocate for those resources. I'll move on to our other big priority, the bond, AB 247 by Mr. Muratsuchi. The legislature technically has until June 27th to pass that bond bill and send it to the governor in order to make the November 2024 ballot. But that wouldn't give us much time to run a strong, successful campaign. So we've been asking the decision makers to please come to agreement as soon as possible, ideally in the month of April, about what the content of that bond is going to be. And they are working. We know that those meetings are taking place. They are balancing not just this bond, but they're talking about a potential housing bond and a potential climate bond. They're weighing concerns about debt service and the impact that that would have on the state budget. We know that there are some intra-house dynamics, you know, the Senate having different priorities in the Assembly and vice versa. And ultimately, we need there to be a three-party agreement between the Senate, Assembly, and the governor. And we are encouraged those conversations are taking place, but no deal has been announced yet. We have been busy using the time to provide legislators with very detailed data on what the facilities projects are in their own legislative districts that are dependent on a future bond for funding. And every time the State Allocation Board releases their updated acknowledged list, we update that information and send it out again. You may have seen our communications. We have issued at least a couple calls to action. So let me reiterate that now. Please contact your legislator, and the leaders, we call them the big three. So the pro tem, the leader of the Senate, the Speaker of the Assembly, and the governor, and ask them to please come to agreement on AB 247 as soon as possible. And if it's been a while, maybe you contacted them months ago, perfectly appropriate for you to reach out to them again. And I'm going to toss it to my colleague, Rebecca, who's going to tell you a little bit more about another aspect of our bond advocacy work before we come back and tell you about other legislation.
Thank you, Nancy. Just wanted to add on a little bit on the bond efforts here. Nancy mentioned that there are competing priorities for bonds. School, housing, and climate. There are also various groups that are making requests during the development of the school bond for inclusion in that school bond. And so, you know, there are requests for funds to help green schoolyards. There are requests to include UC and CSU. These are things that are part of the process and the conversation. One request is related to reforms to provide more equitable funding for modernization projects. And there's a group that's asserting that there's wealth-based discrimination in the school facility program. And what that means is that lower wealth districts can't access as much funding from the state program as compared to districts that have higher property values. This group is asking for changes to the funding distribution model for the SFP to prioritize disadvantaged districts and to provide them with more funding. In a more funding scenario, that likely means that some districts would receive very little or no funding from the state program. So there are advocacy efforts around this request that are reaching out to school districts to join up with this effort. There's some hostility related to some of the conversations. So there's been a threat to sue the state if the group doesn't have their demands met. Approximately 90 school districts have been invited to join this advocacy effort. And these are districts that have been identified as those who receive the least amount of funding from the school facility program. What we want you all to understand and know is that these districts are also members of CASH. We represent school districts up and down the state, urban, rural, suburban, large, small, all districts, all students. And we're very sensitive to the issues of funding challenges in the school facility program. We've certainly requested reforms over the years. We believe that there are places that we can continue to make improvements so that all school districts can better access the state program. What we disagree with is some of the methodology and strategy here. And we have submitted a letter to policymakers with some recommendations and some suggestions as they consider this request. The first thing is that we're advising against making hasty changes to the school facility program. As Nancy mentioned, we're working towards that June 27th deadline to get a bill signed by the governor to place a bond on the ballot. And that gives us 2 months, maximum amount of time to consider any significant policy changes to the bond. A policy change that might create winners and losers could alienate some school districts, and we'd need to understand the impact on the viability of the bond. We also need time to understand and vet how voters respond to policy changes, which is one of the things that we've been doing with our polling over the last year and a half. We've also identified that AB 247 takes steps to address some of the concerns that have been raised here. Think about things like the small school district assistance, the increase to the state share on that sliding scale that could be available if you're a district that is a disadvantaged district, right? What we are asking for is to pass AB 247 and to put a school bond on the November 2024 ballot. And then after that is successfully done, convene stakeholder meetings to discuss if there are further reforms, changes, improvements to the program, but to do that in a very deliberative and intentional way with all the stakeholders at the table so that we can fully vet and discuss any proposed changes. We've also suggested that if policymakers want to go even further with AB 247 today, one thing that could be done is to increase that state share on the sliding scale. So currently AB 247 includes a change where you could have an additional state funding if you qualified. So up to a 55% state share for new construction and up to a 65% state share for modernization. Well, we're saying you could look at that number and bump that up to 60% up to for new construction and 70% for modernization. I'll pop a link in the chat to our letter, and that letter, that link also includes a reference and a link to the original letter that we are responding to if you'd like to see how CASH is engaging in this conversation. So I'll pass it back to Nancy. I noticed that there's a question or two that popped up in the chat. I'll take a look at those while we continue. And then when I pop back up, I can respond to any questions. But we wanted you all to know that we're looking at this. We're taking that very seriously, and we want to make sure that we're representing all school districts in this process to develop a successful bond. That's our North Star, a bond that voters will pass. The biggest negative is a bond that doesn't pass or not placing a bond on the ballot, and that would disadvantage all districts in the state of California. And Alan, I think you wanted to add here as well.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Rebecca. I appreciate that update. You know, there was a question that was thrown in, and I'll quickly answer it. And it says, basically, could a portion of the bond of the new bond be allocated to disadvantaged districts while also acknowledging enrollment growth? And the answer to that is it does. The language in our state facilities program is designed to acknowledge enrollment growth with creating eligibility for new construction dollars for your school site. And there's also elements of the current SFP and the new bond that actually looks to strengthen the support that is available for disadvantaged school districts that qualify for financial hardship. So the new bond does both of those things.
And Alan, I think that that's a really good point. The other thing to mention here is that to Nancy's original comments, we don't know how big a state school bond will be. Cash is requesting $14 billion, but in the negotiations that are happening, we don't know what the number is that we settle on. So any special request that's brought forward in this conversation, it really has to be contextualized with the understanding that we have the biggest giant question mark, which is what's the dollar amount? So what's in and what's out definitely relates to how much as well.
Got it. And then lastly is my little maybe poke at the ribs of the legislature is if we don't see those general fund commitments, that means we're going to receive support for a new bond, right? Rebecca's laughing, but yes, that would be the expectations. If we don't get general fund, then we need a bond to backfill that need is really kind of where we're at. So I think with that, we're going to turn it over to Nancy to talk to us a little bit about the School Energy Coalition.
Oh, Alan, I used to have a boss here in the state legislature when I would raise questions like that, and he would say consistency is the hobgoblin of small minds. So I think that's that may be the situation we're back in to your very reasonable suggestion. So I'm just going to give a quick overview of a few bills that we've been spending a good deal of time on, and then toss it to Rebecca, and she's going to tell you about a few more. So I want to talk to you first about AB 2571 by Assemblymember Pappen. This bill looked really innocuous on its face. The authors and sponsors were trying to make it easier for school districts that wanted to use Prop 39 dollars to build either workforce or student housing. And they wanted us to be in a more legally secure place to be able to do that, which of course is wonderful. Unfortunately, the bill and the process of getting there actually would have increased the risk of litigation against school districts who use Prop 39 bonds that way. And in fact, it would have increased risk for school districts using Prop 39 bonds, even those that did not include housing. So we had to oppose that bill and engaged a lot with the authors and sponsors and got that bill pulled by the author yesterday. And as I mentioned, this is the last week, the deadline week, so the bill is effectively dead. I've also been spending a lot of time on a couple of measures that are trying to make it so that school districts cannot collect impact fees until certificate of occupancy. So right now we collect them upfront when people submit their request, their application for a building permit. The document is called Certificate of Compliance. And if we were to move to Certificate of Occupancy, we would not be receiving the funding to build or expand schools up until the families were moving in. So obviously that doesn't work. We're doing a lot of education and working with a broad class of stakeholders because both of these bills affect all of the impact fees. So that's, not just us, but lots of other local agencies and lots of work to be done there, but the conversations are going well. And with that, I will toss it back to Rebecca.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. I know we've got a couple of other speakers that need to get in the next few minutes, so I'll truncate my remarks, but I will respond to the question that I received in the chat regarding bid threshold bills. So there is one, AB 2192, that has been introduced and is moving through the legislative process. This is the bill that will update the CUPCA bid thresholds. So typically cash is excited to see this. We usually support these bills. Statutorily, those limits can be adjusted every 5 years, and it is done based on a recommendation of the CUPCA Commission. So this year, AB 2192 is doing that routine proposal to update. The bill would update the bid limits for force account from 60 to 70,000. Very generous increase. Note a little bit of sarcasm, but an increase is an increase. And then the informal bid limit from 200,000 to 220,000. There would also be a new category, so a new level. Projects performed by negotiated contract or purchase order would be set at 100,000. Right now, those are paired with your force account. So this would split that into 2 different categories. What's a little bit different about AB 2192 is that typically CUPCA increase bills just increase those bid thresholds. What 2192 is doing is it's also expanding the CUPCA Commission's authority to review potential violations. So when an interested party presents evidence of a potential violation, the CUPCA Commission could look at that. And the expansion is that the commission could look at bid splitting. So whether your bid has been split or separated into smaller work orders or projects, or if you'd exceeded the CUPCA bid limits. So because that provision is in the bill, cash is not supporting the bill. We're not actively working against it. We're neutral on it, but we're a little bit concerned about that expansion of the authority of the CUPCA Commission. I will say, if you look at the list of those who are supporting AB 2192, which is being heard today in its first policy committee in Assembly Local Government, it's primarily labor groups and no public agencies, which I think is interesting. On AB 2009, just really quickly, that was another request that we got in. That would increase the school bid threshold, that 15,000. That bill is not moving forward at this time. So if you want to reach out to me separately, we can talk a little bit more about that, but it's not moving forward. So just really briefly, oh yeah, note in the comments to host and panelists, I'll just let folks know that the CUPCA Commission is already reviewing cases that are brought to the commission related to bid splitting. Yes. So what they're looking for here, I believe, is statutory cover that allows that backs up something they're already doing, which raises a question about chicken or egg. And with that, Alan, I had a couple of other things that I wanted to mention, but I'll pass the baton back to you because I know that there are other speakers after us. Next month, you'll get Ian. He'll talk to you about the environmental bills, and we'll talk more about where we ended up in the legislative process this year. Thank you.
Great, great. Thank you, Rebecca, and the whole team of all the great work we're doing to stay on top of what's happening up in Sacramento. So thank you for all that work. So we do want to shift a little gears now. We'll go to the next slide, and we have Denver Stairs, who's our chair of our Cash Federal Network, to talk to us a little bit about the work that his team, the committee, is doing in Washington, D.C. So Denver, take it away.
Perfect. Thank you, Alan. Yeah, we're excited. We've actually got a group that left on the 21st and is in DC right now. Unfortunately, I was not able to make that trip, but Cash has been active in federal advocacy for school facilities for more than 20 years. So just recently, July 1st of 23, we kind of brought it in-house. We rebranded it to the Cash Federal Network. And like I said, we've got a group that's there right now. So CFN, Cash Federal Network, has been providing free monthly webinars to provide more information on federal advocacy and encourage more school districts to join CFN. During the next 6 months, we'll be continuing to expand school district and county office CFN membership. So be on the lookout for that. The fall trip that we went on was great. It was very successful. We had a number of meetings and got to get in and speak with folks. We had great participation, so we hope that we continue to grow that. So be on the lookout. We have, like I said, the group there now. We will be taking our fall trip again in October. So please, if you have any questions, hit us up on that because we would love to get more people there. It's great to get in. The more we can bring and spread out and everybody kind of meet with their respective folks. So that's great. We also had our largest group ever attend or come to our meeting or a workshop at the fall conference. So it was the largest group in over 20 years that came to that, which was also awesome. And we're starting to see our work paying off, right? So with the school facilities now being recognized as infrastructure, this is reflected in the federal grant to CDE for direct facility support for small districts and the eligibility for the federal infrastructure programs in the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure legislation. So our committee remains committed to this work, and really what we would like to see join us at our next, we have a meeting coming up in May for just our monthly meeting. But if you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out, because we would love to have you at those meetings and then ultimately on these advocacy trips that we take to Washington, D.C. That being said, I'll turn it back over to Alan.
That's great. Thank you, Denver, and really important work. A lot of us in school districts specifically are really beginning to grapple with this reality of like a lot of our ESSER deadlines are rapidly approaching, and whether or not there's going to be some discussion at the federal level to allow us some opportunity to extend those dates. So, and as well as like all the regulations that are coming out with the IRA grant, I know solar. We're dealing with issues related with domestic product and getting some definitions on all that. So great work you're doing. I really appreciate you leading that effort of going to Washington, D.C. So with that, I don't see any questions. So thank you, Denver. And we will move on. We'll bring up our vice chair, Tom Pace, is with us today, and talk to us a little bit about all the planning that's happening with our school conference right around the corner. Good morning, Tom.
Morning, Alan. How are you, sir?
Good, good.
And I'm sure you're wondering what April 24th is. And April 24th is three things. It is National Pig in a Blanket Day. So for those of you who like pig in a blanket, tonight you can make some. It is also Administrative Professionals Day. And so I'd like to thank all our administrative professionals that work hard to support our work each and every day. And it's also National Bucket List Day. And I hope that we all have on our bucket list attending the annual conference, which is going to be held in Palm Springs, February 24th through the 26th. Couple updates related to the annual conference. The call for Strand co-chairs and committee members has been extended. The window's been closed. We'll be making appointments for the co-chairs and members shortly. So if you applied, stay tuned. We've also sent out a call for workshop topics with a deadline of April 26th of this year. And our next annual conference planning committee will be held on May 22nd of this year. A little bit of commentary on AB 247, as one who works in a disadvantaged school district, I think that the conversation around equity and equality is a healthy one. And I think that's what's occurring right now is, are we looking for equity or equality? And I think that's always an interesting topic for our communities and for our state to discuss. And I think those conversations are healthy to have. So with that, Alan, I think the time is back to you, sir.
Great. Thank you very much, Tom. You and the team of folks that are helping you with the annual conference, great work. I truly understand what goes into that. So I appreciate all the hard work of making that the best conference ever.
And
so,
are you a pig in a blanket guy, Alan?
No, probably not. I just go straight for the pork, just dealing with that. So
you don't need it wrapped in anything? Gotcha.
Yeah, I don't need it wrapped in anything.
Well, and if you're wondering what tomorrow is National Hug a Plumber Day. So
oh wow. Okay.
For our facilities professionals that are plumbers, if you do get a hug, that's why. So
yeah. But I did remember that it was Administrative Professionals Day, so I took care of that this morning.
You're a good man.
I am. Thank you. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Tom. And we'll move on. People's Choice and our job exchange. So I am also, while we're doing this, including again for CDE, a link to the CDE field rep exam that's available in case you're interested in working with our state government. But also for all of us members, take advantage of the job exchange program. So this is an opportunity for you as a member to post job positions that are available, or maybe perhaps you're looking for a new position. And also if you have an RFP or something that you want to get some additional get some additional coverage out there for folks that might be interested in proposing on your RFPs. Take advantage of the job exchange and the People's Choice opportunity in our at our CASH website. There's links there for how you can get your RFP or your job listed. So with that, we'll jump into the next part. So mark your calendars. The next monthly meeting will occur both in person and virtually up at the Capitol Event Center in Sacramento, Wednesday, May the 22nd. So look forward to seeing everyone up there for that event. And I want to take one last minute and repeat some of the work that Rebecca and Nancy and a lot of the other folks in CASH are doing, and say contact your local representatives. Those phone calls, those in-person pop-ins, those letters, those personal letters about what you are struggling with in your district are very meaningful to your local representatives. They would really like to hear from you. So pick up the phone and give them a call, send them an email, or if the best thing is to show up and ask to speak to the individual who represents school issues. With your support and with all of our support together, we can work to improve the funding and the opportunities and resources that are made available to schools in our state. So with that, I want to thank everybody for being here today. Appreciate you being here and look forward to seeing you at the next opportunity. So be safe out there and have a great day.